Very good. Thank you, Scott. Good evening. I'd like to call to order the Committee of the Whole meeting of January 25th, 2023, and it is 7:03 p.m. First order of business is the Pledge of Allegiance. Please rise. I pledge of allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, the next order of business, roll call.
Alder Allen is delayed, I believe. Is that the case?
That is correct, yes. He should be here around 7:30.
Alder Gerhardt.
Here.
I am writing these down. My apologies here. Usually I have a check sheet, but that was not provided to me. Alder Aradafrada.
Yeah.
Alder Strassman.
Here.
Alder Maldonado.
Here.
Alder Wheeler.
Here.
Alder Udell.
Here.
And Mayor Richardson.
Here.
And Alder Herbst.
Here.
You have a quorum.
Very good, thank you. Moving on to the next item, approval of minutes from the October 26, 2022 draft minutes. Do I have a motion for approval?
I'll make a motion.
Second.
Okay. Motion made by Alder Strassman, seconded by Alder Maldonado. Discussion. Hearing none, I'll place the motion before us to a vote. Those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any nays? Hearing none, the ayes have it. Motion passes. Moving on to item 5, public appearances for non-agenda items. Scott, do we have anybody registered? All right, we have no one registered at this point. Moving on to item 6, we have 2 items on the agenda this evening, and the first one is, of course, 6A, and that is the TDS Fiber Project by Josh Worrell, Senior Manager, Business Development with TDS. And I believe you're going to speak for about 30 minutes this evening, Josh?
Yep, 30 whole minutes, yes.
Okay, all right. Very good. Nothing short, nothing greater, right? Okay.
Correct.
The floor is yours.
All right, 1 second here. Can everybody joining virtually see the presentation okay? Assume yes. Well, good evening. I'm Josh Worrell. I'm Senior Manager of Business Development for TDS Telecom. Business development at TDS is housed in our Government and Regulatory Affairs group, so it's a little different than your traditional sales. My team does a lot of the research and analytics to look at communities around the country to qualify for our Added Territory program, and then once they qualify, our senior leadership chooses which communities we're going to invest in. My team reaches out to the municipal leaders to introduce them to TDS, our history, our pedigree, and what we have planned for their community, all the impacts, both good and bad. So tonight, we're going to walk through just already introductions, a brief overview of TDS's history, the community benefits of the fiber program that we're going to deploy here. We'll talk about construction, and then any questions and answers that you guys may have, we'll get to at the end. So TDS, we're a Fortune 500 or 1,000 company. We've been in business for over 50 years. The company was founded by Roy Carlson. He went around the country 50 years ago buying up small ILEC companies. ILEC is incumbent local exchange carrier. It's just the legal designation for the phone company. So generally speaking, across the country, communities all have 2 different providers. They have a cable provider and a phone provider. We're the phone provider in about 34 states and small rural communities throughout the country. So the mission statement of the company was to bring phone to rural communities across the nation. So we serve some very rural areas, islands off the coast of Maine, all the way to the bottom of the Grand Canyon and everywhere in between. We're part of TDS Inc., which is publicly traded on the New York Stock Exchange. Our sister companies are U.S. Cellular, OneNeck IT Solutions, and Subtle Strauss, and then you'll see some of our accolades there at the bottom of the page. We are headquartered here in Madison, so right off Junction Road, not too far from here is our main office. We're the 7th largest wireline provider in the country. We serve over 1,100 rural and suburban communities. This is a little look of our footprint. Sorry, that's not showing up great there on the screen, but we're in about 34 different states. If you look at Arizona, Oregon, Utah, and Colorado, New Mexico, those are our cable properties. So that's kind of unique for a telecom company. Back in 2013, we took the stance of, hey, let's just be the best broadband provider in any given community that we're in, regardless of technology. So we started acquiring cable companies, and that was a great way for TDS to continue to organically grow. So we have expertise in both technologies, cable and wireline. The issue is we ran out of companies to buy. Most of the cable acquisitions in today's telecom world are multi-billion-dollar Charter, Time Warner merger and acquisitions, and that's not a pool that TDS can play in. We sit in the $50 to $350 million acquisition range, and of the companies, there weren't a whole lot of those left, and of the ones that were left, their networks needed extreme capital reinvestment to bring them back up to par, and it was actually cheaper to build a brand new network. And so that's what we started doing. In 2016, we piloted our out-of-territory program, and we trialed that in Sun Prairie, Wisconsin. So that's, as you guys are well aware, a suburb of Dane County, 30,000 people at the time, 10,000 households, and Sun Prairie was actually building their own municipal fiber network because they were so vastly underserved by their two providers at the time, Charter Spectrum and Frontier. Frontier was actively trying to get into bankruptcy, and Charter pretty much had a monopoly for their community. But due to capital restraints, it was going to take Sun Prairie about 15 years to build out the municipal limits. So we partnered with them. We bought their existing assets with a couple neighborhoods that they had built. We migrated them to our network, and then we built out the rest of the community in about a 15-month time span. And by every metric we can measure Sun Prairie by, it was a tremendous success. We're over 60% market penetration there, and we like to say it was good for everyone who became a TDS customer and for everyone who decided to stay with their current provider, because about 2 months after we started offering service, Charter Spectrum upgraded everybody free from 60 meg to 100 meg, then 100 meg to 200 meg. They're now gig capable in that community, and they compete with us on price. So we like to say competition's powerful. These investments are kind of niche because we're targeting communities that are not eligible for grant broadband funding because they already have broadband speeds and providers. So we're looking to provide that competition and choice. So why Fitchburg? We talked about it before. Great household growth, good demographics, and the need for competition. So our corporate parent was nice enough with the results from Sun Prairie to give us a little under $3 billion to look at the country as a whole and identify communities where we could make similar investments. And so we've slowly scaled our fiber program since 2016. Starting next year, we'll be doing construction in over 70 communities in Wisconsin. We've completed about 14, and we're in Boise, Idaho, Spokane, Washington, Coeur d'Alene, Idaho, and we recently started expanding into the state of Montana. So this has been the growth engine of our company. We've done pretty much all the communities around Dane County, and Fitchburg sits nicely between Verona, Oregon, McFarland. From a network synergy standpoint, it just makes sense to continue to expand our fiber footprint here and around Madison. A little bit of the community benefits. Fiber, the big buzzword in the industry right now, is future-proof. It essentially just means once we place the fiber in the ground, the capacity of the pipe is unlimited. So while today we're going up to 2 gig symmetrical speeds, 10, 15, 30 years from now, if your typical residential home needs 10 gig, 15, 20 gig internet, the fiber can handle that capacity. We just have to switch out the electronics in the customer's home and in the cabinets, but the network itself can remain untouched. A little bit about our products and services. We're going to compete directly with your incumbent cable provider, so TV, phone, and internet service. We'll offer all three. And like I said, our entry-level speeds are 300 meg symmetrical, and we'll go all the way up to 2 gig symmetrical, 10 gig for businesses. Here's a little bit of the footprint we are going to be servicing. Just a little detail here. The green to the right of the screen, the small green polygons, we call those DFNs. So just as an example, a DFN stands for Distributed Fiber Node. We're going to go through your entire community and break it up into small neighborhoods and polygons. And that's how we'll permit, construct, and turn up service. So it'll be a rolling turn up. That the neighborhood that we start in first, which will be maybe 200 to 300 homes, in this example here, one of those squares, we'll construct that, we'll splice it, and then we'll start pre-selling and offering service, and we'll slowly work through. You'll have 3 nodes here in Fitchburg. A node is just a large, think of it as a beer fridge cabinet that holds the electronics. There's about 10 DFNs per node. The node number 1 that you'll see on the screen is existing today. It's a one-neck IT data center that's in one of your industrial parks. We're already co-located in that facility, so we're only going to have to place two cabinets in Fitchburg for the remainder of the build. So about 30 total DFNs, covering almost 12,000 service addresses, totaling about just shy of $7.5 million, and we're targeting about a 24-month build. If past experience, construction tends to go longer than shorter, so it probably won't be any shorter than 24 months, but somewhere between the 2 and 3 year time frame for total build out of the municipality. Just to point out, Lacey Road there, right dead in the middle of the screen, you'll notice that that's not in the polygon. That's simply because we have existing fiber there today. When that new neighborhood went in, we expanded to portions of Fitchburg, so it's not going to be part of the new existing build because it's already there with fiber. Construction's disruptive. Residents do not distinguish between the street right-of-way, public utility easements, and their front yard. There's no getting around this. There's no way to put 100 miles of pipe in the ground and not disturb some residents. So we've kind of developed a pretty substantial notification program to let residents in Fitchburg know what's going on, who we are, and who they can contact if they have questions. It involves several mailers that we'll go through here later in the presentation, but we've learned over the last 5 years that communication with the public is key, and giving them as many resources to reach out to us as possible is our goal. Customer service triage team, so just a little bit on this. On all of our materials, this triage number is available. It's a specific call segment of our call center that's set up to deal with construction-related issues. So if residents call in the number, a ticket is opened. We have SLA response times based on the severity of that ticket. If it's a safety issue, obviously we're going to respond much quicker. And then that ticket stays open. It gets pushes to our contractor and our management team in market. And then when the utility company when the contractor company finishes and completes the ticket, they notify us in our system that it's been completed, and our call center then reaches back out to the customer to verify that in fact that work has been completed before closing that ticket. So our contractors in market cannot close or resolve issues until we've verified. This has been a really great resource for us and customers, so we strongly recommend as the city gets calls, as people start to become more aware of construction, push people to this customer service triage number so that we can properly document, track, and process their complaints and get them resolved. Our website, tdsfiber.com, has tons of information on education on what an easement is, what to expect during construction, and videos related to what we're going to be doing in the community. It'll cover safety and what the flags mean. Obviously, we'll have locates going down on the ground to expose existing utilities so that we can figure out where our running lines are going to be placed, or the safest place to place them. So we ask residents to please not remove those flags during the locate process. And on our website, we just provide a rundown of the different kinds and what the colors mean. Again, this is just more of the materials. That postcard is a big, ugly, black and yellow, non-marketing piece that we will send to every neighborhood as they're beginning construction. There's nothing that the customer has, or the resident has to open. So it's there in their face. We're trying to, draw their attention to it. Has all the information on there, some paragraphs about what we're doing and why we're doing it, and then offers that number if they have any questions to please call in. We'll also place yard signs in their yard. So like when we go through and do construction in a certain area, there's usually a hole left that we're going to be placing an access point in, and we'll go stick a little tiny yard sign right next to the hole because people come home from work and they're like, why is this hole in my yard? Oh, there's this nice sign right next to it. Maybe I need to call TDS and see when they're coming back to fix that. We talked a little bit about tdsfiber.com. We strongly recommend if anybody has questions or is looking for more information that they cruise over there to look for that information. And then, of course, on the website too, neighborhood status, we're going to be periodically updating as construction comes in, what areas of the community and what their status is construction, whether it's in permitting, under construction, construction can finish, or check back from updates. So when residents go in, they'll punch in their address. It will bring up the polygon that they're in for construction, high-level date on when we believe construction will start in their community and when it will finish and when service will be available. Obviously, we keep it extremely high level because it's flexible based on construction, based on supply and electronics and things like that. And then finally, just committed to our community, you're going to see a lot of involvement from TDS here locally. We like to say we out-local our competition, so our local field marketing reps will be reaching out to the city. If you guys have city events that you host here, we want to be sponsors of those. We want to participate and bring people out, give giveaways. We'll be joining the local Chamber of Commerce and sponsoring their events as well. There'll be a very large local presence as we're rolling this out. So that's all I have for tonight. I'm happy to answer any questions you have related to TDS or what we have planned for construction for our rollout.
Very good, Josh. Thank you. Is it possible for you to go back to an earlier slide? And I don't know what the number of the slide, but I'm looking at the Fitchburg construction. That kind of outlines the area of your build. Yes. How far south do you go? We've had a challenge here in Fitchburg of the southern rural portion of the city that lacks broadband altogether. AT&T doesn't serve, Charter doesn't serve. It's all very limited. And of course, their builds are really focused in on take rate and specific distribution areas. Yep. How far south are you going into Fitchburg?
So for now, just the polygon there for this initial build. I mean, we have the same challenges that obviously you experience with Charter, where density is an issue. You know, fiber construction's we average about $87,000, $88,000 per mile. So when density starts going down, it gets really expensive to get to those far out rural customers. Our transport does run down through Fitchburg to Oregon. So we do have plans to eventually pick up people what we call along the route. But as for right now, this is the initial polygon we'll be targeting. There's always opportunity, and our regulatory affairs group is looking at grant opportunities in and around our existing footprint to then spread out to get out to that next level.
Sure. Because
we serve a lot of rural areas. But for now, at least for this initial project, for our out of territory, this polygon is what we'll be targeting.
Okay. Well, and you mentioned the polygon several times, and I think you also referred to them as nodes.
So
they're not passive. They're actual electronic, correct?
Correct. So the three hexagons there, I think it is, the 1, 2, 3, those are the larger cabinets. One's a data center. They're going to house the electronics. And then the DFN polygons are kind of they branch off from the nodes. There's about 10 DFNs per node.
Okay.
And then we'll set access points at people's lot lines so that when they order service, we can run a drop or a fiber line from the access point to their home to offer the service.
So just to clarify for the public, if you enter into a copper, what I'm going to call distribution area, you are actually taking fiber to the home, like a fiber to the prem, fiber to the home. It is not something where you're terminating at a device like a VRAD and then taking it on and sending the service, the traffic on copper. You're actually placing a fiber drop in an existing copper area as well.
Correct. This is 100% fiber
Brand new
network.
build.
Yep, all the way to the home.
Okay, good to know. All right. We'll open it up to Mayor Richardson. You have a question.
Yeah, just a quick one, kind of following up on Randy's question. Do you know the percent of the Fitchburg population that you'll be serving when you have the full build?
I can get that exact number for off the top of my head. I don't know. It's a large percentage. I mean, it's upper 90s of other than just the rural customers that we were just talking about.
Great.
Okay. Thank you. Additional question. Yes, Alder Arata Frada, you have your hand raised.
Yes, thank you. I want to understand this map in front of us. So the blue line said is where it's going to be the new transport line is similar to. Are you going to use existing lines there? Because I am looking at this map and it's going through my neighborhood. And 2 years ago, I have a Spectrum doing all this work on my backyard, So I wonder if you're planning to do the same transport that other company used, that they are already there, and, because it looked like it's coming back to my area again. So, or you're gonna build all the new transport lanes? You know what I mean? I want to understand those blue lanes, how they are running through the neighborhood.
Yeah, thank you for that question. So just to clarify on the map, the light blue line is just the outline of the greater Fitchburg area that we plan to serve and the homes within it. The dark blue line between the node cabinets or the yellow polygons is our transport between nodes. The distribution will go to all of the homes within the light blue polygons. So what you're describing, yes, we will not utilize Charter Spectrum or AT&T's distribution lines. These will be all new lines that are owned and operated by TDS. So yes, we will be coming through your neighborhood again to reinstall lines.
So there is a chance that you're gonna go my backyard again.
Depending, it depends. If we can access the public utility easement in your backyard, we will construct there. There are times that either on the plats that they might be prescriptive and it's not open, it's only open to the incumbent provider, so there's a chance we may be constructing in your front yard.
And I'm guessing most of this work is directional boring. You bore as much as possible?
Correct.
Yeah, instead of open trench. Alder Herbst, you have a question. Go ahead.
Get this without an echo. Joshua, the fiber from wherever into the home, are you running that with a metallic pair around that so it could be located at some point in the future?
Yep, all of our fiber will be locatable. It's either has a hard sheath or there's a tracer wire in the conduit itself.
Thank you.
All right, additional questions? Seeing none. Oh, I have a hand. Mayor Richardson.
And you said roughly 24 months, maybe a little more than that. And you go all winter long too, don't you? Is that correct? Or do you take some time off in winter?
Depending on weather. Obviously the ground gets hard and it freezes and it's very hard to dig. The other issue we have in the winter, just to be transparent, is there's going to be a backlog of restoration that can't be completed in the winter because asphalt and concrete can't be poured. So whatever we tear up in the winter, it just continues to sit temporarily until we can get to May. And so cities generally, there has to be a balance, right? Because if you just go full bore all winter, you have a massive, all of a sudden the snow melts, and then you guys are getting phone calls like crazy because everybody can see their front yard and sidewalks. And so it's a balance. We would like to continue working during the winter. It's weather dependent, and it just depends on the time.
Makes sense. I like the pun with going full bore, by the way.
Yeah.
And all of this information is online as well?
You can go to tdsfiber.com and there's more information. I can double check. I'm not sure. The address should be loaded for Fitchburg. And if they're not loaded already, once they will be, you'll be able to pre-register for service and get more information on our products and services and construction as well.
Okay, map or enter your home address and it'll
Correct.
Should be some information provided. Very good. Additional questions? All right. Hearing none. Josh, thank you very much for your presentation. Very informative, and we look forward to some competition.
Good deal. Thank you guys for having me.
Very good. We'll move on to the next item on our agenda, and that's 6B, Teen Center Request for Proposal. Deanna Schmidt, City Planner and Zoning Administrator, will kick it off. Deanna, you have the floor.
Well, good evening, everyone. Thank you for having me tonight to just talk a little bit about this RFP that I have prepared for your review and discussion. I'll talk a little bit about our presentation and discussions to the Healthy Neighborhoods Advisory Committee, and then I'll just give you some highlights of what staff is recommending that would be included into an RFP. So 2 weeks ago, we met with the Healthy Neighborhoods Advisory Committee. A couple of things came out of that I would just like to draw your attention to. The committee did recommend that a team be put together to review any of the proposals that come in response to the RFP. That committee would include members of the HN committee, staff, youth interns, UW Health and UW Extension, and perhaps the police. The committee also suggested that we look at other models for teen centers. One of them that was suggested was Spark in Ashland, Wisconsin. There was also mention of the Goodman Center and the Lucier Center, and then the facilities that Stoughton and Oregon operate. We also discussed potential partners for the proposed teen center, perhaps Dane County's social services, Verona and or Madison school districts. And then finally, we did discuss some of the data collection that might be important in this RFP. For example, how youth would feel before and after participating in any programs, youth employment needs. There was some discussion about just ensuring that teens have the basic life readiness. We talked about tax preparation. So that's some of the high-level kinds of discussions that we did. And now what I'd like to do is just briefly highlight the components that staff has prepared for your discussion. And there's A through F that I want to just talk about briefly. The first one is objectives and priorities. So this step would build upon the phase one for the teen center, the phase one results. And really what we would suggest to council is that we further refine the objectives of the teen center and then work through what are some shared measurable outcomes and measures of success. Item B would be a needs assessment and market analysis, and what that would entail is data collection of social economic data, understanding the numbers of teens, understanding their needs, understanding what services should be provided, and also understanding what some of the barriers that teens might face to accessing those services. What's important about this step would be that we would want to make sure that there is a trend analysis. So it's not just looking at today, but as you know, a teen center would be a long-term investment for the city. And so we would want to look at trends over the next 5-10 years and longer at those numbers of teens and their needs. This section would also have a market analysis. As you know, Dane County has a number of wonderful social service providers and nonprofits. We would want to make sure that we understand what is already being offered and make sure that whatever the city does complements and enhances what services already exist. The next item or component within the proposed RFP would be preferred program and facility space. And what I'm suggesting here is actually 3 different concepts that would be developed that would just list the services that might be provided, list what sort of facilities would be needed, kinds of square footage. This would really be 3 different kind of broad scale options, just probably in a table form with some rough high level cost estimates. And this is a very important step for the community to be able to say, yeah, this is what we want, and this is the general high-level kind of costs, but then there's this option and this option. I think it'd be a very important step in order for discussion. D is management structure and operation plan. And I feel strongly that this is really the most determinant of a success of a teen center. Because this is where the consultants, the community, would work through the management structure of a teen center. There's three kind of broad areas that we often see in this: public, private, so a public agency like the city, and then private in terms of capital investment in terms of the building. Second one would be public nonprofit, and that model might be where the city builds and even maintains the building, but then nonprofits operate. Number three might be public-public, where the public is the city, builds, and then works collaboratively like with Dane County or with the school districts. So we would work towards identifying the right management structure. And then also the operational plan. And this is still really high level, thinking about who are the partners, what are their roles and responsibilities, what does staffing look like, what are the legal contract needs, what are the insurance needs, safety and security plans, what are the performance evaluations, more importantly, who governs, what's the governing structure, who decides what happens when. So here I'll just like to step back and just say, we haven't even started talking about sites or drawing pictures or site planning or designing buildings at this point. That's really this next step at concept development, where we evaluate, do we need to select a particular site? What type of site do we need? Do we need to renovate, co-locate with an existing facility, or select a vacant site and build a new building? So this is where we're working out what things look like spatially in a particular place. This would also lead into more refined capital project estimates, how much it's going to cost, and then develop some timeframes. And then my final section would be the actual capital budget and then an operational pro forma. And that capital budget would be just that. Depending on we're co-locating, renovating, the capital budget would look at funding sources, align those funding sources with the phase of the project, with the types of users. For example, as you know, park fees can be used for certain types of facilities and operations. So versus a funding source like CDBG, which has to be directed and spent in other ways. And then that last piece is the operational pro forma, which all that means is annual budgets. What are the revenues coming in, and then what are the expenditures to operate the facility year after year? So sorry if I went fast, and I know there was quite a bit there. I really look forward to your comments and your questions and your thoughts as we work to refine this RFP.
Thank you, Deanna. Thank you for your professional input. Before we move forward, I'm going to turn the floor over to Alder Maldonado and for him to share his vision regarding the Teen Center.
Sure, thank you. And thank you, Deanna and Brad, as well as Administrator Brecklin, for kind of moving this process along. I know having sort of a change in staffing, meant a lot of learning and a lot of patience, so I really appreciate the work you've all put in. Also want to recognize the Healthy Neighborhoods Committee because they were there, through the first selection for the first phase of the process. I really think this plan is good, and it builds upon kind of the momentum that came from the first part of the study. And I don't have a lot to add other than I think it's just really important that the folks that we identify, as this process moves forward, the community stakeholders, the people that are giving input, is really broad. and it's really, inclusive. Just having young people participate throughout this process, having, entities that specialize in public health, in youth adult partnerships, participate in this process is critical. And if we don't have, the folks at the table who would be the users of this space or the people that would be the beneficiaries of this space, won't be able to, be truly successful. I also think it's a good opportunity for teaching and learning. Oftentimes, like city processes can seem very difficult for just the average, citizen to understand. There's a lot of technical, space. There's a lot of technical, language, a lot of things that you wouldn't know unless you're in a certain profession. So being able to bring the public through this process and be able to understand this process as well as give input in this process is a two-way street. And I think it's really important that it'll be beneficial to the community and just kind of promoting, really transparent process. So that's all I've got to add.
Okay. Very good. Thank you, Alder.
Can I just ask one question?
Sure.
Because one thing I'm not clear on, Joe, is do you see this as operating Monday through Friday from like 3 to 6? Is it longer than that? Is it weekends? That's one thing I'm not clear on is how often is this open and available?
We did start to dig into that actually in phase one. We had a huge event where we had a focus group, like a series of focus groups. There were probably about 30 teens actually there. And they actually brought up that same question, and different people had different opinions and ideas. And I think it really depends on how, all of that I think would be, to some extent, began to be fleshed out in a study, right? Like if we look at other community centers in the area and what their staffing capacity is and what hours they're able to operate a space, I think that'll probably give us insight into, what's possible here.
And Deanna, is that one of the areas that you have in the RFP? Is that probably operational plan? Yeah. Okay.
Into the operational plan and tie into the staffing. Mm-hmm.
Okay, great, thank you.
With that, would you like to continue on? You have the floor, Mayor.
Sure, yeah. There's a lot of people online, unfortunately, but I tried to write down a lot of information that Deanna was talking about wanting in this, and it's, what are others doing? Hopefully you can read in the room. I don't know how well you can read my writing, but, what are others doing? And part of that is the market analysis. Possible partners out there that we can work with, and how does that work into a management structure, an operating plan, possible services that it will provide, and, also 3 options with the costs on, okay, is it a lot of services, medium services, small services, kind of like Goldilocks, I guess. Too big, too little, just right. Needs assessment is another thing I have on here. Some objectives to this as well. What trends are out there as well. Looks like at some point location and looking at different locations. And then also both a budget and funding sources for this as well. So I think I have everything on here. The one that I guess I'm going to ask about that I don't remember you talking about, and maybe this is market analysis, but I've had some people tell me that they don't think it should be strictly a teen center. They think it should be a community center, and there could be a teen focus to it, but it should be more of a community center. Is that something that's going to be part of this or not? And that's a question, I'll let you answer, and I guess it's a question for the council is that important or not? Because I know that Joe's vision is teen center, and that's all he wants, but I've heard from people in the community that they'd like to see it broader. So I don't know if that's information that we want as part of this or not, but is this something that you'll be looking at or want to look at, Deanna?
Yes. So that is definitely that first part where we're talking about the objectives. My first part, objectives and priorities, I envision that as a public process to really help refine of what that vision is. I do understand that that not everybody might necessarily think it is necessarily needs to be a teen center, And certainly at that first part, we can open that up for a broader discussion. Yes.
And so I guess I want to, and this is interactive, I want input for people. Is there information that Deanna hasn't mentioned that you want to see, or you have questions on is this included or not? Is there information that you don't think is necessary maybe, but what's your feedback on this? Is this enough? Is there more things you want? I'd like to hear from people. Yeah, Jim.
Yeah, I like the proposal, but I just want to put it out there, and I think people know me. The biggest thing that's going to be a part of this for me is the cost. I think, looking at it just in a vacuum, we can say, oh, this is a great deal, but the city is going to be coming up to some financial realities. And I think sometimes as we talk about this from when this first started, it kind of gets away from financial realities and it comes to, one of the reasons I ran for council is when I heard one of the alders, when this first came up, if you don't do it, it's because you don't like black people. And that's not the way we should run this. We should run this not on, insinuations or attributing motive. There's going to be a cost to this. We got the Southdale neighborhood that already we're going to need more paramedics. We're probably going to need more police officers. I don't think the state is really going to be giving us a lot of help, at least from the people I talk to in the legislature, where they're probably going to give some relief on public safety. But as far as coming up against the tax levy, I think people need to really come to some realities here, that there are a lot of needs in the city, and it's just not going to any one particular group. We're not really denying any one particular area any funding or anything like that, or that we're not servicing, because streets department goes all over the city, police department goes all over the city, fire department goes all over the city. And if somebody really wants to say that there's money going to areas that they think is not fair, then I think they need to identify those and not just throw it out there and saying, well, this area is not getting any services or whatever, because I think the whole city is basically getting services. And if there's not people getting services, look at Irish Lane, look at the streets that are south of Lacey Road. They're not getting any new streets anytime soon because of the budget. So I would like to actually make sure that we are being exact about the costs. The other thing I really want to focus on is that this is a city of Fitchburg process, not people coming from all over the place, not people coming from Madison and telling us we need a teen center. I want to see the focus be on people who live here and to make sure that we're getting their voices and not coming from the outside saying that what we need. Because I've actually, when other officials come in here and tell us what we need, I find that kind of disturbing for me, because I don't go to other cities and tell them what they need. So I just want to upfront, what is it going to cost and what are the actual needs? Because Dane County puts $200 million into social services. And I'll say it again, Fitchburg is not an entitlement community. We do not get federal dollars. All our stuff comes from the county. So when people have this idea that all this money is coming in, it's not. It's basically we can't get grants or whatever. Is on the tax levy, and the taxpayers should know what they're getting. So those are my only comments for right now.
Shannon, if you want to.
Yeah, Shannon, go ahead.
So I also was kind of wondering too, have we reached out to either Madison or Verona school districts or some of the Madison areas about possibly partnering with them in funding the teen center, possibly? Because I know a lot of our kids, we don't have our own high school. So I know a lot of our kids go to Verona and Madison, and it would be nice if we could see them put a stake in the teen center as well, and not just Fitchburg.
Yeah, and that's one of the things Deanna mentioned, is looking at possible partners, and those would be possible partners to go to and ask. I'm not aware of any school districts that are contributing towards either any of the community centers in Madison, the youth center in Oregon, the youth center in Stoughton. I don't think so, but I'm not sure of that. And that's part of the information that we'll gather is what are possible partners and how are they operating, where are they getting money from. And I've already talked with the Oregon Village President a little bit and the Stoughton Mayor a little bit. They're very open and willing to share all that information. So that's information that we will be getting as part of this to find out how are other people paying for these, and so we know who we can partner with. Other thoughts, questions, things that maybe aren't included that you want included? Gabriella, go ahead.
I did just want to say, like, obviously, no study like this it has to cover the cost of running the facility, but there is also a broader effort to identify and tackle root causes of issues like teen delinquency and kids, not having the support they need to have after-school programming, which does have a societal cost, and we do pay for it in the form of, unfortunately, more policing and more jail time. And that's maybe just one very small aspect of this. But yes, there is a cost of the building, but there is a cost savings in terms of identifying and solving some or addressing some root cause issues of some of these bigger societal problems. And I don't know how you figure out what that type of, if you can put a number on that, but there's a bigger picture here too that's more than just the cost of the building itself. And I think we shouldn't lose sight of that when we're doing something like this and thinking about the potential, life-changing impact a facility like this could have on individuals. And my understanding is that during the last part of the process, there was actually a focus group with teens that were in juvenile detention, asking them what they needed, what they would have wanted in a space like this, and what that might have done for them, which I think is a pretty powerful representation of the potential impact. So I don't want that to get lost in this, is that there's a cost that's not as easy to quantify, a cost savings that's not as easy to quantify, and that's very valuable as an investment.
Alder Wheeler, you have your hand raised. Go ahead.
Yeah, one of the other reasons I took this position is because I think the other voices need to get out there. One of the things that I look at is permanent housing too. And I'll say it again, I look at this, not that I'm going to be totally against it, but when I hear like this is the thing that's going to change things, let's look at a little history. The Indian Removal Act, 25 million acres was taken away from Native Americans. Okay, and a lot of that land went to people who were able to then get that intergenerational wealth, where we have HUD processes that African Americans weren't able to get homes. Okay, well, that again, to me, took away those stable avenues where people can really move up the ladder. And not that what I'm saying that, Gabriella, what you're saying is wrong, but I also want to get it out there that is more to it than just having teen centers that's going to move the needle. And what I like is that we will be doing some studies to see if this is actually working, because I think that's one thing that we never look at, whether these are actually working. I grew up in Philadelphia. There's a teen center on every corner just about. It was a teen center behind my house. Okay, it still doesn't look like it's going to move the needle. So I'm going to be one of those kind of like people who are really kind of like moving forward with caution, but I've been around a long time. I've been hearing the same thing over and over again for most of my 60 years about how this is kind of like going to be the thing that moves. I think what the city is actually doing with affordable housing will do a lot more with people having stable homes than actually a teen center. I've worked the streets of Madison for 28 years, and when I go into some of these homes where people are on urine-soaked mattresses and everything else like that because they don't have stable homes, I mean, that really had a big effect on me. And then, the other part that just came in my mind when people are like, raise my taxes because we can have this. Well, you know that when you raise taxes, and taxes also gets raised on those apartment buildings, which then with people who are, can't afford some of these rents anyway, their taxes get raised. So when I heard that in this kind of, this chamber, where people are like, well, raise my taxes, because I'm like, okay, that's nice when you're living in a $300,000, $400,000, $500,000 home to volunteer to have your taxes raised. But if we're actually looking out for the poor, let's think this through and stop with the whole politics and everything else like that and come up with some real solutions.
Ideas that you have?
Yeah. So there was somebody that was involved with the process, a colleague of mine at Extension, and she actually gave a really captivating presentation sort of about public health benefits of having spaces available, right? And this isn't sort of like, I don't think Alder Gerhard was suggesting that this is just the thing that's going to solve all the world's problems. So, I think the response to her comments were a little bit off and kind of not really reflective of what she was actually trying to say, which is that there is a public health benefit in having spaces for youth. That there's actually evidence to back that up. And, we can introduce a bunch of other things that, what about housing? What about cops? What about roads? But ultimately, we're not here to really talk about that. We're here to talk about this RFP. So just with all due respect, I think we should kind of stay on topic with what we're discussing, which is the actual objectives of this study, which by looking at this RFP, it's really well thought out. And I think it was well put together by our planning department. And it's also backed up by the previous study, which actually provided really robust results and actual solid community engagement from youth. All of those other things that you mentioned, Alder Wheeler, are very important. Housing is critical. Safety is critical. High quality of life is critical. But that doesn't take away from the fact that we have other things. I wouldn't necessarily pit this against the senior center or this against the library or this against Fact TV, because they're all valuable services that contribute to the better well-being of our city. So, with all due respect, I think you're grandstanding. And, it's clear you're opposed to this project, which is fine. But the points that you're making are detracting from the actual point of this discussion, which is to talk about what this study will find.
One of the questions I would have, Joe, if you can speak to this, because I agree that there's so many health benefits, but except for Madison and Dane County is responsible for all of those things, and they have a $200 million, multi-million-dollar budget. They just raise taxes 9%. Should we actually be putting pressure on them to? Because I don't think they don't do any community centers, teen centers, or anything like that, and they're responsible for the public health for most of Dane County. Should we be actually working with them and putting pressure on them to be doing this?
I think we should seek investment, in all avenues that we can. But I am. I've put this forward. I've advocated for this, and I think we do need to put somewhat of an investment in. The city of Madison invests in community centers. Other cities invest in spaces in their community. And we've made investments in spaces in our community. We have a library, we have a senior center, and when you're working towards creating something, right, there's going to be pushback to it because it's new. But yes, I do think that we should seek support in any and all avenues in which we can and which make sense. And I think, again, that's, a part of something that's listed in this feasibility study, like where are we going to go for funding? What's the cost structure going to be? So, I really think we should, to the very minimum, trust this process and not necessarily, toss stones at what this is taking away from and sort of look at this on its own merits.
Alder Wheeler, you had your hand raised.
Yeah, one thing that I'll never do is shut up. And I don't care who says what. And you may say I'm grandstanding, but that's your opinion, okay? And I take that as a personal attack because I respect your opinions. I really do. But when you're going to try to make attributions for me, you're wrong. And you shouldn't be doing that. Because I'm not making attributions to anyone. I'm giving my opinion. And if you want to come back about personal attacks because I give an opinion, I don't think that's professional, really. Because I'm not grandstanding. I'm saying what's in my heart. Okay? I've seen a lot. And I don't need somebody to come and tell me I'm grandstanding for anything. And like I said, I took this position, my voice is going to be heard. And if anybody in this room don't like it, so be it. I'm not going to shut up because I've been doing this for a long time, been around a long time. And I care about people in this area. That's why I volunteer to mentor young kids because that's where they should start, in my opinion. And I know some people laughed at that, saying that was old-fashioned in a previous meeting. But that's what I'm about. And if you want to do the personal attacks that I'm grandstanding, then so be it, Joe.
So I'm going to transition a little bit to community needs because I think that to not say that those other things that we have in the community and other costs we have in the community aren't part of this isn't realistic because we have a limited pot of money. And any dollar we spend in one place, we take away from the other. And there's a lot of needs in the community. And I know that all of you know what some of those are. I know you talked earlier, Jim, about police, fire, EMS. I'm not sure if many of you have talked with our chiefs in those areas, but all of the three of those areas have severe needs for staffing right now, for funding. And let's talk about, the reality is that in fall of 2024, we're going to have to do a referendum of some kind, probably for public safety. I know you've talked with a lot of people, Jim, and the chiefs. Do you know roughly how many people they think they need?
Well, it'd be 6 part-time paramedics just for Southdale. And then the chief could be, he wants a lot. But I'll try to say, Chief, you need to calm that down a little bit, maybe 2 or 3.
So if you ask them, they would say probably at least 7 police, 7 fire, 7 EMS. And we're not going to do a referendum for that many, but just for people to understand that we have severe needs in all those departments, and that's just those departments. And so, yes, we'll do a referendum, which will take care of a lot of those needs, hopefully, if it passes. But you're not going to take care of all those needs. But those are 3 big ones. There's a lot of other costs, and a lot of things that are out there as well. People I'd be happy to, you know what these are. I'd like to open it up to other things that people know about, I think will know about, hopefully know about, that are things that are very expensive that are coming up and putting pressure on our budget. Because, yes, I'd like to do this in a bubble and not worry about these other costs, but we have a limited budget, and we're limited on how much we can raise in taxes, unfortunately. And raising taxes, like you mentioned, does impact the affordability of the community. I know that someone from Avante that lives in Avante said that they got a letter, Avante sent all the people that rent from Avante a letter saying their assessments are going up, their taxes are going up, your rent's going up. All those costs get passed on. So, Gabriella, I know that you have something. Go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to double check that. So the purpose of this agenda item was to discuss the RFP. Is that correct?
It's to discuss the teen center. A big part of that is RFP, but I think that it's part of a bigger discussion, though, that's the teen center, whatever it is part of the bigger picture. And so that's where I'm trying to paint that bigger picture right now.
Of course, I think the conversation about how we build a budget that prioritizes, different values is a much broader conversation than just the singular RFP. And I would say that I actually much dislike the competing dichotomy that it's like, in order to have something, we have to take something away. that's how we have done the budget in the past, because there's no money, so I have to take something out to add something back in. But there's also an ability to actually take a step back and look at it as a whole and decide what our priorities are and construct a budget that reflects those priorities. And that it does not have to be this one or the other. We just have to look at it with a new lens. And I think that we're going way far down the road. There's this like attitude that this is already, we can't do this. That's what I keep hearing. Oh, we're never going to be able to do this. So let's talk about how all the other things we have to pay for and I think we need to do this RFP and talk about how we can do this and look at the reality of it, what the impact will be, what the cost will be, what the benefits will be. And then at that point, we can have that conversation, because the budget conversation is so important. It really is, and it's unavoidable. But I don't think we have to think about it in this give and take way. There's a different conversation that we can have about values that we've never had as a council, because the way the budget process works, if we're just given a document and then we're told there's no money left, so remove something to add something. So, and that's one way to do it. That is a way to do it. And, I don't blame anyone for that. We have tight budgets, but I guess I would just say that I would love for us to go into this process with the hopefulness that let's learn about this, let's learn what the benefits are, and eventually we will get to that budget conversation, but it'll be a different point in time, and we can potentially get creative about how we construct a budget to make something like this work, because we construct budgets to make a senior center work and a library work, and we do that. And some communities might consider those luxuries that they can't afford, but we make it work. So that's what I'll say.
Shannon, go ahead.
So, I mean, and, kind of on what Gabrielle said, it is about a budget, but I think that's why I raised the point originally, was to see kind of what we could get from Dane County, what we could probably get from Verona or Oregon, to see if we can come into it with other communities to see if, we can look at it that way and maybe not have to sacrifice, but we always have to keep the bottom line, I guess, at the forefront. But I would like to see us brainstorm and really figure out how to make it happen. I want to see this teen center come to fruition, but I also don't want it to be a taxpayer's burden, because it becomes everybody's burden, not just, the people that can afford it. So, and that's, that's one thing I wanted to say.
Julia, go ahead.
Yeah, so what I want to mention, Shannon, all these questions that you were asked are valid, and they are part in, you look at the project scope, section D, when they talk about the management, structure, and operation plan, all these questions that you ask are going to be answered under that point. So, but I think I agree with Gabriel. I think we need to, instead of looking why we shouldn't be doing that because of the cost, then we need to start looking, be more positive and say, if this one is a great space for our community, what we can do to make it happen. What we can make, and I think this is the first step that we have in front of us, the RFP. We are going to go through all these questions. We are going to do the need assessment. We are going to do the structure, possible partners, and then there's going to be a budget. And then it's going to be an operation budget. And then we depend how we partner, who we partner, and how we're going to make this happen. We are going to have a final definition of how much it's going to cost to each taxpayer of the city of Fitchburg. But that point is still at the end of this scope, And I will say that, I want to come to this project and this RFP with the attitude that this is great for our community. This is a great amenity. How we can make this happen.
Shannon, go ahead.
So, I guess for me, I'd be a little bit more comfortable with like a timeline of when this is going to happen, because I understand what you're saying, and, you know, it would be great. But I also want to know, like, I'm just afraid that it's going to get to the point where we come to the point where it's ready to go, but we don't have the finance portion to it. So that's just my fear. I mean, I understand both kind of where Gabriella and you are coming from, and Joe. I just want to make sure, you know, that the financial part comes in line too.
Deanna, do we want this information back by July? Is that accurate? So we have this for next year's budget? I can't remember if there was a timing on there. I thought there was, but can you have
I don't have anything set in my head right now, but I think if we were to get out the RFP really, really soon, hopefully we can get something back by July.
Mayor, Senator Wheeler.
Yeah, Shannon, I really want to emphasize your point, and you know, even Julia's. You know, this is the first time I've heard really a tempered process in this. When you look at all the other meetings, it was just like, we're going to do it and we're going to do it tomorrow. And even though people don't like my comments, my intent was basically to say, we need to slow it down. That's all. And we should not, and I made this comment before, that we're giving people expectations that this thing is going to be done tomorrow or as soon as this report comes back. And there's a lot more to go on this than is going to happen tomorrow. It may happen in 2 years. It may happen in 3 years. We don't know. But I really appreciate the comments of kind of like laying out to the public of the way that this has to go. And it's not going to be, you know, it's not going to be easy. And, you know, I just want to put that out there, and I'll keep saying it every time that it looks like we're going to have this tomorrow, because we'll have another meeting, and we already got one email from someone who's saying that we should buy the building already. And it's just like, it doesn't work. Government does not work that way. I've been in government for 28 years. It's a slow process. To build a police station in Madison took 10 years, and we were busted at the seams. There are other things that come into play here, and that's all I want to get out to the public, that it's not going to be, we get this study done, and the next thing you know, people are going to be coming in, well, you need to do it right now, because I don't think it's going to happen, and I'm just being real.
Yeah, Randy?
I'm just going to follow up on that, and I'm in agreement with with several, but Jim, I agree with what you just stated. But it wasn't too long ago, we were all debating about what this RFP is supposed to be about. Feasibility. Now it's here, and it's an excellent plan. And I've always been in favor of a plan, and I just think we need to carry through so we know exactly what we're working with. There's some very valid points. I am all for stakeholders in this particular project. If it's nonprofit, if it's county, if it's state, whatever the case may be. But we cannot do this on our own if it's going to go forward. So,
And I think that everyone here wishes that we could build this, you know, tomorrow. And frankly, not only one on Verona Road, one on North Fresh Hatchery Road, one in Southdale, because all those communities, all those neighborhoods could use the help. But to say that we shouldn't even consider the financial part of it, I think is wrong, because as I was talking about this and thinking about this, you know, I thought to myself, well, I know there's a lot of other costs. It's not only a public service, but also there's a lot of road resurfacing that we're behind on. There's a lot of road reconstructions that we need to do, like Irish Lane, Fish Hatchery Road outside here. We are already expanding transit a little bit next year, which is great. That's part of the budget. But we've talked about the need to expand transit to seniors or to the whole city. I mean, both of those, maybe they can be combined, but that's another big need in the city is transportation. And there's so many other needs that we have as a city. And so I was thinking about this, and I asked Misty, I said, you know, what just to do status quo from year to year, what do we need for growth? And she said for next year's budget, if we want to do just status quo, what's in the CIP already, that's already in there, and just for the raises for staff, insurance, things like that, she's estimating that we would need 5.4% of new construction. That would need to be the growth, just to maintain what we have without all the, and that's including the Metro Transit Edition, $125,000 for the hub. So some things that we're committed to and that we're doing in that budget. We haven't hit that in the last 10 years. There was 1 year we were close. We were just below that. It was like 5.48%. But the next highest growth year was 4.88%. And we can share this. We can forward this to the council. But she did a projection for the next 10 years of budgets, and every year is over what we would expect for growth. And I think we're projecting 3% of growth. That's like what was in the finances. Is it going to be 3%? It might be 3.5%. I don't see it being more than 4%. There's one thing on the Plan Commission agenda next month. So that, and I know EJ Plesko, they got the apartment building that was approved that they haven't built, and part of that is because of rising interest rates. So if we see a slowdown, we could be in a whole lot of trouble. And so, yes, we want to do this. I think getting this information is great. When I look at the information that we have and the costs that we have and we know are coming, I don't know how this is going to happen in the next 5 to 10 years. And we can still get this information and we can dust it off in 10 years. But to say that we shouldn't think about that, I mean, yeah, I don't think anyone up here would say that they don't want this built. They do, but you also need to look at the big picture a little bit and say, we need to pay staff and support staff, and that's not even adding new people in public services, which if you talk to the people in those departments will say, I mean, they think the sky is falling. They'll tell you the sky is falling, and there's huge problems there. So I think to say that we shouldn't be thinking about that isn't accurate, and we can get this information. It's a great plan. I really like it a lot. But the reality is that we need 5.4% next year just to do what's in the plan right now, and we're not going to reach that 5.4%. So that's why I think to say that we shouldn't consider that is ignorant, well, not ignorant, it's just incorrect, because, and I've been saying this for this whole time, is the city, someone needs to step up to do this. We can help something, but to have the city do the burden isn't realistic when you look at all the things that as a city we have to do. No one else is going to do things like reconstruct Irish Lane. Now, Dane County, they do social services. They should be the ones that actually should be doing this, and we should be putting pressure on them. And we can help if we've got some land to donate towards it. We can mow the lawn. You know, we can do things, maybe do some programming in there possibly with the community center or the senior center. But that's where I look at it and I say, you gotta look at the numbers. It's, you know, it'd be nice to have this ideal thing here, but that's just not reality, and I worry about the expectations that you talked about as well. People think we're building this, but I don't know when it would be possible to do it based on what we have right now, and things can change. I understand that. Julia, go ahead.
Yeah, so what I want to mention is, we all know about the numbers are important and the budget of this project is important. So it's not like, I disagree with your comment about that. Some of that, because we want this project to move forward, we don't care about the cost. We care about the cost. Believe me, I am an accountant. I do this for a living. Second, what I want to mention to Jim is, Jim, I have been involved in the city for more than 8 years, and I have been involved in some projects that, that some of them they took 4, 5 years to build. Okay, so I know that the good projects sometimes takes a lot of time. I know that. And I have had that discussion with Joe too. Sometimes good project like this take time because we need to do a good planning. We need to find the sources, funding. But at the end, this project can see the light. But it's going to take time. So I don't think that we are building an expectation to the taxpayer that this project is going to be done after we finish the RFP. When we finish the RFP and we have that study, we will have an idea, how we are going to do it, the timeline, how much it's going to cost, and when we can start, doing with the next phase. The next phase could be, maybe we are lucky, could be next year, or could be in 2 years or 3 years. But at least we have this process this project in the pipeline, because we want to tell the taxpayer that this is a good amenity for our community. This is a great facility for our community, for our city. And yes, and I agree that most of the social work have been done. We send our taxpayer to Dane County. But when Dane County is not doing anything, I think we as a community, as a municipality, we need to be proactive, and we need to take control of this thing. So this is what I say. I want to clarify that yes, I care about the numbers, okay, the cost, but also I care that if we do it and we do the planning correctly, and we do all the analysis that we need to do, and this is the first step, we can determine if we can build it and when. That's it.
Shannon, go ahead, and then Gabrielle after that.
So I just really want to say thank you to Deanna, because I feel like this is actually the first time we're really actually talking about finding stakeholders, and I feel like it's the first time we're really transparent on kind of what we want to do for the teen center. So I just want to say thank you for doing your research that you've been doing. And I think this is going to help us a great deal in the future for what you're looking into.
Yeah, go ahead, Gabrielle, and then Jay will go after that.
Yeah, I just do want to clarify that I do care about the cost, and I've said that over and over again. I don't know why people keep characterizing what I say as if I don't care about the cost. It obviously matters, but there's different ways to build a budget, and there's broader conversations that have to happen around that. And I'd be delighted to have that conversation, although I did want to kind of focus on the RFP, since that's what this agenda item is. But it sounds like, Mayor Richardson, that you're against funding this RFP. Is that what you're trying to say? Because it sounds very much like you're opposed to moving forward with this. That's the impression I'm getting based on what you're saying. But I also recall back during the budget process, you said that we would 100% be funding this part of the study, even though we didn't go through it in the budget process. So are you changing your mind on that, or what's? I'm confused about what the purpose of those statements are, since we're not discussing budgeting broadly, but we're discussing this RFP specifically.
No, I think everyone up here wants to continue that. In fact, we had $30,000 towards this, and it's going to cost more than that. And I think that we've identified ways to put money towards that, because this is a pretty big request, and so there is more money that we will have to put towards this to get all this information. Jay?
Yeah, I came into this meeting apparently at an interesting time, so I don't know what happened earlier, but and I apologize for being late. Somebody slid off the road in front of me out in the western part of the county, and I spent significant time trying to assist with that situation. So I don't know that anybody is really thinking this is going to be done tomorrow. I think that's a mischaracterization. Those of us who have been around a long time know that the library process took about 20 years. The process of building the city hall that some of you are sitting in right now took about 7 years. The process of this the idea of having a teen center has been discussed at least since the mid-90s. So it's not a new idea, and yeah, there's more specifics that are available now, and things are starting to take shape. But it's not like this idea just popped up out of nowhere and it's expected to be built with a magic wand. So I think everybody knows government moves slow, and that's just how it is. I'm not sure where this discussion is going tonight. Again, I missed part of it, so I'm going to have to go back and watch it later. But the fact that this continues to just drag on and meet opposition, and it's not that I don't want to hear opposing views, it's just that this is something that the community needs. And we can either go into it with by throwing our hands up in the air and say there's no way to do this, or we can say, all right, let's roll up our sleeves and find a way. And that's where I think we are. Now, in many communities, even in many Dane County communities, teen centers are not funded by the municipalities directly, as the mayor has been unabashedly willing to point out multiple times. But many times these teen centers are funded by the school districts. So, you know, it is probably worthwhile approaching the school districts to see if they would be willing to help with some of these operations. But regardless of that, I think we are put here to find ways to do things, not to just say no because we think it's going to cost too much. So this is an opportunity for us to actually do some work and figure out how to make this happen, because it's not a new community need. This is a need that we have had for decades. That's groups of 10 years, multiples of them. And it is time to get off the dime on this and start actually doing something. I think I read through the RFP. I think it's a great product. I hope that we get back some good information and we get back some good proposals. And I hope that we will be able to start moving forward on this as if we're serious about it. So I'm probably not going to say much more tonight in this meeting because it seems like it's getting awfully hostile as it is. But it seems like there's so much resistance to this particular project, and I don't understand why. We don't have resistance to other things that the city does, and this is just as valuable of a service that we can provide as anything else that we provide. So this is something we need to find a way to make it a priority and get moving on it.
Thank you, Alder. Any additional questions? I would like to bring this back into the discussion of the RFP. Is there anything further, Mayor Richardson? Any hands? Yes, Alder Maldonado, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, so I've mentioned this to the city administrator, the mayor, but there are several aspects to this RFP. There's, different categories, and I think all those categories have different skill sets that are required. So just clarifying and putting it on record, if there were several entities that wanted to say partner on an application, that would be acceptable, correct? Like if one agent, organization has one type of skill set that another one may have that's complementary, that's acceptable.
I agree with you. I agree with you, Joe, that there's probably a broad range of skill sets to put all of this together. I think that we can work with different organizations, or perhaps they could be sub-consultants to a master consultant. I think we can find some ways to work with it.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think Deanna and I can chat further about that and perhaps incorporate some of that language into the actual RFP so that it's clear that we're willing to accept those sorts of proposals, and just ask in the response to the RFP that folks, are clear in who's involved and what their role would be as part of their proposal.
I'm pretty sure we've done that with other projects. One of them might have been the Housing Task Force, so it has been done before.
Yep, we're good there.
Very good. Any additional comments, discussion? All right, seeing none, we will move on to our next item on the agenda, which is announcements. The next Committee of the Whole meeting is scheduled for February 22nd, 2023. Is there any additional announcements before I ask for adjournment? Seeing none, do I have a motion to adjourn?
So move.
We have a motion for adjournment. Second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Ayes have it. Motion carries. We are adjourned at 8:27 PM. Thank you.